This is my honest review of Iron Lung from someone who has never played the game and never really watched Markiplier. I wanted to give my thoughts because I didn't really have any expectations going in. I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free, but if you really don't want to have any preconceived notions before going in, come back to this video after you watch it. So my thoughts are, it was okay. I don't think there were any huge glaring issues that turned me off from the film, but at the same time, I don't think it was overly exceptional. I do think a lot of praise is due because given the low budget, a lot of this film was honestly really well done. I think that the set design did a great job. I felt like there were some great visual effects. The cinematography was 100% a highlight for me. I love when you can tell a film is very motivated in the shot choices. You can tell a lot of planning went into composing each and every shot in this film, and it was really beautiful. The cinematography and the lighting also worked together to kind of hide some of the faults that might have come from the budget restraints, and I think this sets a really good precedent for the future. So if you have a chance to see it in the theaters, I think you absolutely should, because another highlight of the film is the soundtrack. With that being said, I did have a small gripe with the sound design, and that was the dialogue mixing. I know there were some parts of the film where you weren't really supposed to understand what was going on, but there were parts of it where I was sure it was important information for the plot or for the character, and I did not hear what they said. And this is a point that Moist Critical brought up in his review too, which kind of validated my point because sometimes it really could just be your audio processing. However, some people point out in the comments that they went to another theater and not only was the dialogue more comprehensible, they could hear other sounds like the bubbling outside, which I really wish I could have heard. So it could have just been my theater, I don't know for sure. I think the biggest part they struggled with was the narrative. I really wish they leaned more into character motivated choices and really let us marinate in some of the scenes that were supposed to be more emotional. Like there were some scenes that had some pretty big reveals, not only to the plot, but could have revealed a lot about who Simon was and what he was feeling in this moment, and they cut from those moments too quickly. There were also some parts where there were some emotional climaxes where the cut from that to the next scene was super jarring. I just felt like there was a lot of emotional whiplash in this film where it didn't really give you any time to sit with this character and the emotional core of the story. And near the end, there is a series of scenes that kind of feel like it's just repeating the same sequence over and over again, and we just end up at the same starting place. I didn't feel like it changed Simon's character at all or that he moved forward. And when you repeat these sequences over and over again, it doesn't matter how beautiful they look, it just starts to make you lose interest. I think the best piece of screenwriting advice I've ever gotten is a story isn't literally the things that happen, it is the character. And the problem with this film is it just felt like things were happening to Simon and he wasn't the one driving the narrative. And especially when you have a lot of scenes that deal with insanity, you really need a character to anchor it down for you. Working with insanity is something that's hard to do because ultimately it is something that is not real. And because of that, you care less rather than a choice that is deliberate. I also didn't really like the flashbacks. To me, they were more distracting and weren't used purposefully enough to actually hold any meaning. I much prefer the moment where he was having an entire monologue at the intercom. I think that showed us the most about Simon's character, and I wish we got to experience more of that. To me, I wasn't very satisfied with the ending. I was disappointed because it felt like they were going towards a complete character arc for both Simon and Ava, who are foils to each other in their perception of survival. Ava being someone who doesn't value the individual, including herself, but instead the entire survival of humanity, while Simon sees the value in every individual and doesn't understand why people are giving up on their innate need to survive. And just when I thought that arc was going to complete, once again the chaos kind of comes in and just rips you from it. It was a rerun of the same sequence again, and then it ends. I know that's really vague, I'm trying not to spoil it, but the thing is with this story you have to ask yourself, why Simon? Why is this character the lens for this story? There were a lot of points in this film where it kind of just felt like things were happening for the sake of an interesting plot, and that to me is why I just think it was fine. I think if they really honed in on developing Simon and letting us experience an emotional journey with him, it really would have set it over the edge. Like one of my favorite movies is Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it is because of the mother-daughter relationship that drives the entire film. Like my favorite part of this movie, where there is literally everything on a bagel and crazy cosmic events happening, is where they are just rocks. I know a lot of people probably want to know about Markiplier's acting, and I do think it probably would have been better if it was a professional actor. I do not think he was bad by any means, but to do a film where you were essentially talking to yourself the entire time is incredibly hard to pull off without it sounding unnatural. And the parts where you're showing emotions like anger are easier to pull off than what the majority of the film is, which is subtle. It is sincerity. It is what you do when no one is watching, and I think those were the parts where it fell more flat to me. But again, that would be hard for any trained actor to do, and I think for someone with no experience, he did a fine job. There was no part of this film where I felt like, oh god, that was a terrible choice. All in all, I don't think it's the type of movie I would probably watch again. I think there were a lot of moments that fell flat to me and needed some smoothing out, but that doesn't make it bad by any means, and if you have the chance to see it in theaters, I would highly recommend it. Overall, this is a win for independent cinema, and I am really excited to see not only what Markiplier does next, but what the independent film community can pull off.